My guest today is Annie Vo, the COO of Premier Dental. Annie is a New York qualified lawyer and a dynamic business leader. She combines her international legal expertise with her contribution to the Vietnam's healthcare sector. Annie returned to Vietnam in 2017, and on what was supposed to be 1.5 year transition back to either the US or Australia, she ended up with her husband taking over the family business, which is a dental clinic founded by her father. Hi, Annie. Welcome to Thriving in the Age of Disruption podcast series. Perhaps you can share a little bit about your life, personally and professionally.
Thank you, Dr. Ramesh, for the invitation to be on your podcast. I'm honored to be here. I'm Annie Vo, and I'm a bilingual Vietnamese American born here in Saigon, but I moved to the US when I was 5 years old and grew up there mostly in New York City. I had the benefit of attending some of the best educational institutions that the US has to offer, starting with the Spence School, which is an all-girls private school in New York, Yale College, and then NYU Law School. I started off my professional career at Debevoise and Plimpton. It's an international law firm in the US, and I worked on capital markets and other corporate transactions. And I worked there for about 5 years before moving back to Vietnam. Upon moving back to Vietnam, I continued working as an in-house counsel, remote in-house counsel for MetLife, a US insurance company. And I did that for about 6 years, but at the same time, I took on various roles and responsibilities within my family businesses, which are mostly dental clinics and a dental supply distribution company. So that has been quite a journey being a second generational owner of my family business. I'm also a proud wife and mother of 2 daughters, and I am also very deeply involved in the community in various aspects, some of which I'd like to highlight, which is I'm one of the co-leads for OV Saigon, a group of over 1,000 overseas Vietnamese who have come back here in Vietnam to live. I also co-host a social lunch for a group called Việt Kiều Nữ, which is a supportive environment for professional overseas Vietnamese and Vietnamese women. And then I'm the president of the Yale Club of Vietnam, as well as a member of the steering group for the Women's Executive Group of the Business Executive Network, which we're both a part of and where we met.
That's right. Wow. I wonder where you get the hours in the day to do all this.
Oh. So I am doing things that I really love. And so I get a lot of energy out of it.
How old are your daughters?
My daughters are 7.5, almost 8, and 10.
Oh,
So
wow.
they just started third and fifth grades.
Right. I started this podcast in 2021, and the intention then was to give the listeners a slice of life, so to speak, hearing from other change makers like yourself who've had different upbringing, different exposure, different career track, and also different entrepreneurial pathway. And I'm really excited that you're someone from family business because that's a very important area in Vietnam. I call it the tsunami of succession that is happening, right? The founders are handing over to the next gen, and a lot of them are doing it at the same time. And what's interesting about Vietnam is that most of the next gen, when they start to take over, they may find that their job is to basically steward and nudge the professionalizing of the business and let it be run by professionals, and they take more of an investor and a steward kind of a role in the business. So maybe you can start out by sharing about your journey in being the next gen who's taking care of your family business.
Yes, sure. So it wasn't the plan from the beginning. The first 2 years of college, I thought about becoming a dentist, and I took the pre-med classes. So pre-dentistry is pretty much the same as pre-med, and got some of the worst grades that I have ever gotten in my life. I had to drop genetics because I was taking that class with upperclassmen, hardcore pre-med upperclassmen. And so it wasn't the plan. I am a lawyer. I was living in the US. I didn't think I would take on the reins of the family business, and we thought we would have to hand it to relatives or my dad would have to sell it. But as fate would have it, I met my husband while in college on summer vacation in Australia, and he happens to be a dentist, a Vietnamese, a
Lovely.
Vietnamese Australian dentist. So after he came to the U.S. to live with me in New York while I was starting off my legal career, and he went to Columbia University. And after 4 years there together, we moved back to Vietnam on what was supposed to be a temporary basis to stay here while I had my second child. We had our first in New York, came here. My parents were here. I wanted them around to help. And we meant to stay here for a year, year and a half. And my husband and eventually myself to a smaller extent would help out with the family business while here. And
Mm.
so that year, year and a half has extended to 8 years now.
Wow.
And we found ourselves becoming more and more rooted here. We get a lot of personal and professional satisfaction from taking on the family business
Mm.
and moving it forward. So it is my dad's baby. He has been a dentist for 40, 45 years. He founded the clinics 20 plus years, 20, 25 plus years ago. And it's his life work. And I'm an only child. So besides me, it's this other baby. And I feel a lot of pride in taking it on as a family legacy. Not being a dentist, I take on all the other roles besides sort of the clinical aspect. My husband, we're kind of like a two-person team, but I
Mm.
feel like he brought back a lot of things that he picked up from his international practice in Australia and the US and his postgrad degree at Columbia. It was run as very informally with no written down policies and procedures, but we're putting a lot of that in place. We're kind of upgrading some of the techniques and the materials and the procedures used, and we're keeping everyone to a really high standard. We're also bringing back very Western concepts such as patient autonomy, consent. Communication is key. The old style Vietnamese way of thinking is that I'm the doctor, I'm the expert, you listen to what I say. Traditionally, Vietnamese doctors and dentists can get kind of impatient when you ask them a lot of questions. It's as if you're questioning them, but we're
Right.
changing that culture and trying to getting everyone to put patients first. We're doing everything sort of very ethically by Western ethical standards as well, but then we're still keeping some aspects that my dad put in place. We view the company as our family, and we value our employees. We put them before ourselves.
Mm.
During COVID, we didn't lay anyone off. Differently from my dad, we're bringing it into the modern world by implementing some marketing as well. He was very old school and old fashioned in thinking that marketing is more sort of like selling yourself.
Yes.
And we need to change that mindset, and that now with so much marketing, even to be on a even playing field, we need to do some of that in order to get yourself known or heard about or in front of potential customers, right? And so we're putting some of that aspect in place and being on social media, etc.
Oh, wow. Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. So I think it's important for people to have what we call as an entrepreneurial mindset. And
Mm,
I define an entrepreneurial mindset as one whereby you are being resourceful.
mm,
Resourceful, I mean that when you look at a problem, you're able to correctly identify the problem and that you're able to manage uncertainty and create value, both financial and non-financial, for yourself as well as all your stakeholders.
mm,
So, what you've described as your journey from the US and back to Vietnam, it's
yeah.
obvious that you have an entrepreneurial mindset. I wanted you to share how you're seeing yourself being able to navigate the challenges. I think it's important that people have an entrepreneurial mindset first
Mm,
before they even consider starting or running a business.
mm,
And in your case, you jumped in to run this business. And
mm.
obviously, you have that mindset, but you might not have matched it to some of these characteristics.
Okay, so I do want to preface this by saying that I did not start out wanting to become a business owner or a
Mm.
manager. and sort of put into this position because for family reasons, circumstances made it sort of conducive to do so. And I found a value in doing so. But my professional background is as a lawyer, which did give me some skills, but I'm not a professional manager. So being a family business owner, you have to wear a lot of hats. I
Yeah.
give myself a title of COO, but that doesn't really describe what I do.
Yeah.
And on a daily basis, you have to wear many different hats, and it really depends on what it is that the company needs at that time. So, entrepreneurial mindset to me, at least in my situation, is doing whatever needs to be done.
Great. I love that. I can hear in the background, you're open. You're not like, oh, it should be this way
Mhm.
or it shouldn't be this way, right? And
That's
then
right.
that also makes it work.
Yes. My flexibility and ability to adapt to new environments, I've built that skill throughout life from a small age, sort of moving from Vietnam to the US. The story is a little bit more complex than that. When I lived in Chicago and LA, I moved first to Chicago, then LA, and then New York. And in Chicago and LA, I lived with two different relatives' families. And I was moving to a new country, new language, even new families. And I remember sort of like crying every night by myself and feeling a very sort of profound loneliness because I left everyone and everything that I was familiar with back in Vietnam. And then my mom at that time was in New York. But then after crying for I don't know how many nights, I realized that I have to step up to the plate and just face the situation and do the best that I can. And sort of that self confidence and resilience and adaptability, I think, has served me well in a number of different situations. And similar to this one, because I don't have professional training as a manager, but I think and my husband have done a good job at taking on the helm of the dental clinic. So being flexible and open to ideas and constantly learning, willing to put in the hard work, and willing to do anything that's necessary for the company. So, for example, some of the roles that I've played have been when we opened our District 2 office, I was the District 2 office on-site manager.
All right.
I interviewed everyone that we hired for that office. I oversaw putting in place the processes from reception to the dental assistants to customer care to accounting and all the various pieces, right? And I made sure there was, for example, coffee in the waiting room.
Ah,
Yes. Then also as a marketer, perhaps, or business development, I wear that hat a lot as well. So whatever it is that's required, we do.
well, I think you were too modest to describe yourself as someone who is not professionally trained. So thank you for sharing that. You started to talk a little bit about crisis, and I feel
Mm,
that crisis ready mindset is the second mindset that is very critical in today's volatile world.
mm.
Um, And I define crisis as one whereby you have a setback or sometimes a failure. And most times in a crisis, we experience it to be a life and death. And we can, as an individual, either fight about that situation, or we can flee, or we can freeze. In a crisis, what's your normal way of reacting?
So I keep myself very level-headed.
Okay, great.
I've been thrown in the deep end quite a bit, and I'm also a swimmer. So the worst thing you can do is panic or
Yes,
fight against the water,
right.
right? And the best thing you can do when you're thrown in the deep end is to try to relax and calm down. And actually, when you relax and calm down in the water, you start floating
Yes.
naturally.
That's right. Swimming, is it a hobby or was it a competitive sport that you did?
Yes, I engaged in it competitively in middle school and high school from 7th through 12th grade. I was part of the swim team for my
Wow.
school.
Wow. So from swimming, you have that daily practice to be level-headed, right? and to know how to react. Can you share with us how do you apply it, let's say, in real life, in other situations, not just in swimming as a competitive sport?
So let's see.
Right.
So as cathartic as crying was, it wasn't that helpful with the situation. I realized I couldn't cry forever every night for the rest of my life. And therefore, I had to do something. I think it was a bit of a survival mechanism.
Right.
And I just had to face, this is a situation, I'm in this family. What can I do about it?
Correct.
And first, you have to ground yourself in certain things. For example, I think one of the things that kept me grounded was I still knew that my parents loved me and cared for me, even though they're from afar. I knew that.
Mm.
Back then, we didn't have Skype or iPhones or Zoom or anything like that. And so it was a periodic call, long distance call, which were expensive. But I knew and I trusted the fact that they loved me. And so I was grounded in that. And then I realized that reacting sort of emotionally, crying, or if I'm panicked or if I give up, wasn't going to do me any good. So you have to reach in, to sort of down deep into yourself and find the strength just to get up and to face the situation. And so after that, I moved to different schools and different families. And whenever I face a new situation, it doesn't have to be a crisis, it's just new. And for us, sometimes new can make us feel vulnerable.
Yeah.
But I face new situations with confidence and with a smile, even if I have to fake it until I make it. But when you've already overcome certain obstacles in your life and when you've already adapted to new environments and when you've already made friends in new schools or classes, you start to gain that self-confidence. And so little by little self-confidence and that smile like was no longer fake, but it was real. And I recognize that human connection is the most important. So whatever the problem is, we're all people at the end of the day looking for a connection. And so if you just see the person across from you that way and you reach out, you'll find a connection or a friend or a partner.
That's right. What you said is really valuable because when you shared this whole thing about being that little kid on your own with relatives in different states in the US, how
Yeah.
old were you?
So I was 5 to 7 in Chicago, 7 and 8 in LA, and then 9 when I finally moved to New York to live with my mom.
Right. And it's difficult for children to process stuff, right? But
Yeah.
it's interesting that actually you developed your inner resilience during this time. And normally, when we look at inner resilience, we talk about two things. One
Mm.
is coping mechanism. One of the coping mechanism that you used was a self-talk, right? I've got to stop doing this or I've got to do this, and that's
Yeah.
quite grown up, right? And then the number two thing that I also observed was you've actually over time reframed situation as not as a crisis. Like new doesn't mean anything, right? It's not like good or bad. That was also another interesting thing that you had done. And the third thing is, I'm really amazed how you observe that human connection, right? And that to connecting to somebody, you can create for yourself being grounded again. And it's something that most people struggle with because most times when there's a crisis, they disconnect.
Mm.
You chose connection, and that allowed you to build your inner resilience. The second part of inner resilience is actually support structure.
Yes. So support is really important.
When you look at women and women in leadership, what advice do you have for them?
A piece of advice that I might have for other women or women leaders in life or in business, which is to seek out mentors, right? And mentors have been key in my life, starting, for example, with my mom at home. And then I was in corporate law, but I sought out a litigation uh, woman attorney that I looked up to. She was Filipina and she had blazed through and achieve so much. And I really highly respected her. And when I reached out and asked for advice on what can I do, how can I move through this corporate law environment, how can I succeed, she took the time to share very genuinely with me. I'm going back a little bit in time, but someone that sparked my love for learning and the English language and books was one of my teachers in this program called Prep for Prep. It was a nonprofit program that helped minority students in public schools from disadvantaged backgrounds get into private school. And that's how I got into the private school in the first place. But I remember, I mean, she was British and she loved reading so much. She imparted that into me. And so from my mom to a teacher to a mentor in the law firm, seek those connections with other women, especially, and seek their support and advice. And I've benefited from that through my journey. And therefore, I want to give it back as well. But even if we're at different stages in life, we can still learn from each other and we can still support each other. And so even if I'm older and someone's younger or they haven't had that much experience, you can still learn and help one another. And friendship is a great source of support as well. So I benefited from that and I want to give back.
Right.
So I have some more pieces of advice. In addition to finding mentors, I have two other pieces of advice. One, put in the hard work.
Yes.
And two, put yourself out there.
Mm.
Okay. So what does put in the hard work mean? I think everyone has to put in the hard work. Men, women, everyone. I think you have to put in the time in order to gain expertise or mastery or understanding of anything. So put in the hard work. And then, especially as women, our work gets scrutinized more than that of our male colleagues. It's sometimes just the way things are. So it's better not to get caught off guard or be tripped up. And so it's best to be well prepared. And also, when you're well prepared, you're best situated to take advantage of the opportunities that come your way. I have examples from my law practice. For example, I was tapped by the Peter Lochran, a corporate law partner at Debevoise and Plimpton, to help him put together a presentation like for continuing legal education within the firm on corporate governance requirements for listing publicly on NASDAQ or NYSE. I was just a first year associate at that point. And of course, I was very careful with my research and putting together the slides. But I kind of went the extra mile and looked up secondary sources and all that. And I was like deeply enmeshed in this. But my role, at least at the beginning, was to do the research and to prepare the presentation. And then Peter was supposed to present it.
Yes.
And then the day of comes and something comes up and he's not in the office. And he's like, Annie, why don't you go ahead and do the presentation? I was like, what? So I have to calm down, not panic. Right. And because of all my preparation, I really did honestly know all of this material quite well. And I did the presentation. And I think the fact that I did that well led to other opportunities in terms of legal work down the road with Peter and other partners as well.
Mm.
So put in the hard work and be extra prepared for various reasons. My last piece of advice is to put yourself out there. What does that mean? It means raising your hand. So like I mentioned, I went to Spence, an all-girls school.
Yes.
And we had very small classes, but it could be anywhere from, four students to 20. Our largest was 20. And everywhere you looked around, everyone who raised their hand in class to say what they think or answer the question or step up to do a project or to lead were girls, were women. The captain of all the sports teams, student government, president of the student government, all of the leadership were women. And I think that was very good for me to see. And I took it for granted. Back then from 7th grade to 12th grade, I took it for granted because everyone was women, were girls.
Mm.
And then I got to Yale and I realized, wow, the number of students who of the folks raising their hand who are my male colleagues were like was most of the people raising their hand, students raising their hands in class were guys. And the girls were shy. We feel like we have to perfect things before we say it. And if you feel that you've done the work, then be confident. Don't sort of self-censor. Basically, just raise your hand, put yourself out there. Don't always take the back seat or the role behind the scenes. Put
Yes.
yourself out there to be the one doing the presentation for group projects. Don't just do the work, but put yourself front and center as well so that you can be seen and heard, because it's very important for being recognized for what you did.
Right. Great advice for emerging young leaders, especially women. Get mentors, be prepared when you have an assignment, really thoroughly prepare, and raise your hand and put yourself out there, right up center, right?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, good. The next question is about spirituality. Where are you in your journey?
Right. I usually don't get these types of questions. It's a bit of a more personal question, but I'm happy to answer. So, by faith, I'm Christian, interdenominational Protestant Christian. And this is actually a little bit unusual for a Vietnamese. The vast majority are not Christian. They're sort of Buddhist or non-religious. And then about maybe 10% are Catholics, and then less than 1% are Protestants. So my family on both sides for multiple generations has been Christian. Yes.
That's unusual.
Yes. And ironically, the fact that I come from a deeply Christian family has made it difficult for me to find my own personal faith and belief, rather than just sort of a family or cultural sort of practice.
Right.
So it's a journey that you really have to go on yourself to make it a personal belief. So I'm glad that you said journey, because it really is a journey with ups and downs and backtracks and moments of stagnation. Um, and also moments of fervor. At the moment, I'm in a very stable place, plugged into my Christian sort of church community for a few years now. And that's another support network that I failed to mention. And then my husband and I are both Christian, and it has provided a strong foundation for our relationship, but also for raising our girls. And I think my faith has also supported me during moments of crisis. You know, that feeling of being loved. So that, and of inherent value that comes not only from love from my parents, but also from my faith.
Right.
The foundational values of like sort of the inherent worth or value of each person. It comes from a lot of religions, but for me, it comes from my Christian faith, right?
Right. So I guess if I had to sort of sum it up and ask you, how would you describe spirituality for you? What's the essence of spirituality for you? Is it faith? Is it experience of being loved and accepted? What is it?
Oh, wow, this is a deeper question than I expected. Spirituality is the experience of faith. Not sure how to define it. So, spirituality just means faith and your experience of that throughout your life.
Right. I get that. So it is that relationship, right? Because faith means you have trust, right?
Hmm.
And how do you endure that in spite of the circumstances? And so there's the ups and downs, and so it's that faith that we keep generating ongoingly.
But also the faith in a higher being, or in God, and in the fact that in your belief that there is an afterlife, your belief in certain foundational truths about the universe, and that there is good and evil, and my almost sort of experiential, but like you say belief, but like very deep belief and feeling that this is true.
Mm.
You know, not everything, but this is true, that there is good and bad, right and wrong, and belief in a God.
Right, great. Thank you for sharing it. Yes, I know it's somewhat personal, but thank you for addressing it.
Yeah, maybe that one thing that I wanted to say is that I think it is important for all of us to engage with, these questions of spirituality and faith, whatever our religious persuasion or lack thereof, to ask those deeper questions, like probing questions about the meaning of life, or is there an afterlife? Is there a God? To ask those questions and go on that journey.
Yeah, thank you. So my next question is about living a simple life. Do you think it's possible to do that? How would you describe a simple life?
You ask all the hard questions, but it made me find time to reflect a little bit more deeply. So let's answer what a simple life is, and then we can answer, is it hard or difficult?
Right.
For me, a simple life means living contentedly and true to yourself and your values on a day-to-day basis. So I think that means sort of focus on what's the most important to you. And for me, what is most important for me is caring for others and leaving a positive effect or impact on those around me, starting with those closest to me, namely my family, and then expanding beyond that in sort of concentric circles. Right?
Right.
As long as I can do that and live according to my values and leave a positive impact on those that I come across in life, I'm happy, I'm content. I like the word content because it's deeper. Happy can you can be happy and unhappy. That's sort of it fluctuates. Okay, so can you live a simple life in today's world? I think it's difficult. Living a simple life doesn't necessarily mean like a quiet or slow life. It doesn't mean that, but it should mean that you're not sort of pulled in too many or all different directions. And it also means that you know where you're going and where you're headed. I think it's become more difficult to live a simple life in today's world because of the proliferation of choices and of information. Um, and there's a lot of choices and of information. So you need to be able to sift through all of that and cut through all of the information, choices, events, invitations, opportunities, and cut through all of that and all that noise to get at what it is that you really want to do.
Wow, that's pretty profound. You called out two things, and one is focus on what's important, like what's in alignment to your values. You gave me the example of being a positive impact and caring for others, right?
Mhm.
So, presumably, it is most consistent with your values. So that's
Mhm.
the focus. So it's no surprise, therefore, you're volunteering with your alumni group and the returnees and many other kind of care for others, right? The second part of it, are you
Mm.
fulfilled, right? Am I content with that? And fulfillment or contentment, it can be answered like a yes or no. A lot of people are unhappy because it's like something has to happen outside of themselves for them to say, oh, I'm happy. But actually, in reality, it's the same as contentment because you can say you're happy, right?
Yes.
The expression of one's ability to assert contentment and fulfillment
Mm.
is more active than in the word happiness.
That's
In the
right. That's right. It's almost a choice.
yes, so that's great. Thank you for sharing that whole conversation with me about simple life. Now, if I had to ask you to describe thriving, right, or flourishing, what three words
Mm.
would you use?
Oh, 3 words. So for me, I think thriving, this is a little bit of a difficult question to answer, but and we do have to assume that we're sort of not living sort of day to day, month to month, and we have a roof over our heads and all of that. Thriving sort of means being able to live authentically,
Mhm.
so true to yourself, and being able to maybe self-actualize or pursue self-development, develop your potential and use it hopefully for good, or have whatever impact it is on the world or other people or those around you that you want to have. I guess really just two: living authentically and self-actualization. The ability to do that if you have the resources to do that. So I have to say you have to have the financial, emotional, relational support systems in order to be able to do this. This requires quite a bit.
Right, right. Okay. How about sustainability? What's sustainability for you, and how does that show up at work or in your life?
I haven't done research or even read a ton about sustainability, and it's like a hot word now. But for me, very simply, sustainability means sort of longevity in your horizon, in your time horizon or your scope. Long-term thinking and consideration in the long term, again, of everyone that's being impacted. So the word there would be stakeholders.
Yes.
But the key word is longevity and considering the impact on everyone that is involved.
Mm. Mm. Wow.
So yeah, so I apply this a lot to sort of all the realms and sort of I think a lot of aspects in my life. But my husband and I, Dr. Albert Vietlay, he's the Vietnamese Australian dentist that I mentioned previously, and we run Premier Dental together. We integrate sustainability into our running of Premier Dental through our very, very long-term vision for the clinic. Um, so firstly, we're already second generation owners taking over from my dad. And we are already talking about and having conversations and suggesting to our daughters for their future in the business. I say it jokingly, but I think it is a wish that maybe one of them or they could, or their husbands or vice versa would play some role at whatever role it is that's most suited to them in the company. We apply sustainability in how we view our our company's mission. So we don't view it as a business, a money-making business. That's actually when I think about our company, I think about the service or the good that we're providing to society,
Mm.
and we constantly want to improve that, and we think of ourselves as taking care of patients and their health. And when they come in, like only we're sort of doctors, and we're caring for people and their health. So not short-term profits or even medium-term or even long-term profits, although we have to, it is an ongoing concern and to keep it going, of course, but we're more focused on the service that we're providing to patients and how we're providing it. And then lastly, we care a lot about our employees.
Mm.
And so we don't think of employees as just a cog in the system, but we have a lot of long-term employees who've been with us 5, 10, 15 years. And we think of ourselves as in partnership with them as well. And we're in this joint endeavor towards this mission. So we apply sustainability in how we run our business.
Mm. Oh, great. And now I'd like to sort of come back to the last question, which was about family business. And what are your thoughts about the future of family businesses, especially from your contemporaries, from the Yale Club, or even your experience of working with your husband now? What works and what doesn't work?
Okay, let me try to think about how to phrase this. I think for those that are in a position to possibly take on a role in their family business, I am very happy that I considered it and that I took on the role, and it's very rewarding. And I also benefited a lot from what my dad already put in place, a great foundation, a company that has been profitable for and in business and profitable for 2 decades, 15 years when we took over. And also, he's handing it off to me and my husband. And so he's teaching us all the secrets, trade secrets, giving us all the relationships, sharing us wholeheartedly the hard-earned experience and wisdom that he's gained through the years. And so I think for the younger generation who are in a position to take over, I have a lot of conversations with my fellow overseas Vietnamese or other Yale alums or women, especially overseas Vietnamese, especially if they're coming back and maybe they still have family or their parents have been here. They very likely have a family business, but it's almost a knee-jerk reaction to say, I want to uh, do my own thing or blaze my own path. And then there's a hesitancy of mixing business and family. And I don't want to have to sort of work with or for my parents. There are difficulties there, but I think they're worth trying to work on in order to continue the family legacy and for the benefits. I tell my friends or my colleagues who say this, and I also tell my daughters too, work for an outside company or for someone else, there's going to be another boss, and they're not going to sort of try to groom you to be the next leader. You have to really fight for that to go up the corporate ladder. And you might not have access to that mentorship and advice and support and free sort of sharing that you would get from your parents. So something to consider. I think that this is a pain point for a lot of businesses in Vietnam, unlike Korea or Japan, where you've got multi-generational companies. And a lot of the leaders of these companies and families think super long term, many generations down the line. For Vietnamese families, when it comes to the transition, they don't think that long term, or they just want to set their kids up for a career abroad or to do their own thing. It's a real sort of pain point. So succession planning, if Vietnamese family businesses can do that and successfully do that, I think we can grow quite a bit.
Mm. Wow, great. Thank you for sharing that. And I think it's an important area, and that's why in our work, 80% of our work is actually with family businesses and the next gen, and
Mm,
it's supporting them to bridge the gap in terms of succession. The founders have their issues, and the next gen have their issues, but if they don't get talking and connecting,
yes.
then we lose the opportunity to transfer not
Mm,
just wealth, but transfer some economic activity and something which is valuable in terms of skill
mm,
as well as legacy to
mm,
other people that could have actually been done. So I would hate for that to be lost. So that's my
yeah.
mission.
I
Mm.
hope everybody support it.
Yeah, I hope so too. Okay, these are some fun questions. The
Mhm.
first one, what's your favorite book?
Oh my goodness. Okay, full disclosure, ever since high school, I haven't read a book for pleasure for the longest time. I've recently joined a book club, and I have read some books for that, but I can't say they're my favorite books. Read a lot of law books. I joined a class in high school to read Tolstoy, Anna Karenina, and War and Peace. But I don't have a favorite book. I mean, my fallback option is always the Bible,
Okay, why not?
which is very meaningful,
Yeah,
and has taught me a lot of life lessons that I still apply today.
yeah, great. And what's your favorite travel destination?
One of our family's favorite travel destinations is slightly unusually, maybe Germany.
Oh,
Yes.
and how come?
Um, That's a good question. I think we were looking to go to Europe when we were in New York and looking for cheaper destinations to go to, or
Right.
like cheaper flights. And Frankfurt was one of them. And we ended up loving it. The romantic road, Neuschwanstein, which is the castle that is the real life sort of basis for the Disney castle. And everything was just so relaxed and beautiful and well kept, and we fell in love with it. Yeah.
Great. So now, if you could have dinner with anyone in the world, who would it be?
Why do you have such difficult questions, Dr. Ramesh?
Ah, it's okay. I guess you have many people you like to invite.
Let's see. Maybe Mother Teresa.
Hmm, nice.
I want to hear Mother Teresa, her sacrificial life. I like, does she feel like it's been a sacrifice? There's so much to learn from her. I look up to her for inspiration.
Great, great. And if you could have any superpower, what would it be?
If I could have a superpower, and I'm not sure I would want it to have it. I think reality might be different than what we think.
Right.
Um, Mind reading.
Ah, okay, I got it.
Yes. Um, I think it would be, yes. I would love to know what people truly think and feel, thoughts, like the human mind. I mean, when I read the news, I gravitate towards articles on psychology, and I've taken some courses, and it's just really rich and deep and stuff, but also can also be very scary. So I that's why I don't really know if I want the superpower or not, but I kind of do.
Okay. And what's the best advice you've ever had or received?
Not sure. I might have to pass on that one.
Okay. Did you ever
Yeah.
give any bad advice?
Not
Ah,
that I want to share.
okay. All right. Okay, so we've come to the end of our interview.
Yes.
Annie, thank you for surviving the surprises and the personal questions. Go through them and really be authentic in giving, sharing with us what you're thinking.
Thank you very much. It was a good experience for me, and it gave me a lot of food for thought as well. Thank you, Dr. Ramesh.
Cool. Thank you.